The focus this time is on the incredible Phantom. The F-4 Phantom II is still in service with about 8 nations. We check out the latest in discovering what may have happened to one of aviation's most famous female aviators, Amelia Earhart. One of our greatest achievements in flight is the Space Shuttle. It is in fact the world's largest glider. We take a look at the test program of this most incredible machine. It's been 40 years since the fabulous Phantom first took to the air on May 27, 1958. The F-4 Phantom II aircraft, which still flies in defence of 8 nations, was retired in 1996 from US military forces, ending a record-studded 38-year career. The aircraft flew every traditional military mission: air superiority, close air support, interception, air defence suppression, long-range strike, fleet defence, attack and reconnaissance. It could fly short training missions or 4 to 5 hour sorties as a wild weasel in search of anti-aircraft defence systems. It starred in both the Vietnam War and Operation Desert Storm, with a record of 280 air-to-air victories and the destruction of more than 200 anti-aircraft sites. It has been flown by the defence forces of 11 other nations: Australia, Egypt, Germany, Great Britain, Greece, Iran, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Spain and Turkey. From 1958 to 1979, when the production line stopped, a total of 5,195 F-4 Phantom II aircraft were built. Of those, 5,057 rolled off the McDonnell aircraft production line in St. Louis, Missouri. The 21-year production run was the longest on record until surpassed by the F-15 Eagle, which has now been in production 26 years. The two-place twin-engine supersonic F-4 Phantom II flew at Mach 2 and could carry a payload of up to 16,000 pounds of bombs, rockets, missiles and guns. Each aircraft has 54,197 feet of wiring and 643,000 fasteners holding it together. More than 800 F-4 Phantom II aircraft are still on active duty with the defence forces of 8 nations: Egypt, Germany, Greece, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Spain and Turkey. Almost 100 Phantoms that have been converted into QF-4 drones and missile targets still serve the US Navy and Air Force. Israel, Japan and Germany have upgraded their Phantoms with new avionics and capabilities. Greece awarded an avionics upgrade contract to Daimler-Benz of Germany in 1997. Given the upgrades already performed and those under contract, the F-4 Phantom II will probably still be flying in 2015, nearly 60 years after its first flight. A common denominator of the past naval aircraft, and perhaps even tomorrow's naval assault aircraft, is the Vulcan cannon. The M61 20mm Vulcan is an externally powered 6-barrel rotary firing gun, having a rate of fire of up to 7,200 SPM. The 6 rotating barrels contribute to long weapon life, by minimising barrel erosion and heat generation. The gun's rate of fire, essentially 100 rounds per second, gives the pilot a shot density that will enable a kill when fired in 1 second bursts. The M61 20mm cannon is a proven gun, having been the US military's close-in weapon of choice dating back to the 1950s. This is a story about a glamorous heroine and her baffling disappearance. Amelia Earhart was beautiful and much loved by the American public as the world's finest female aviator of the 1930s. Amelia set many airborne milestones, and as the first woman to fly solo and non-stop across the Atlantic, she received the Distinguished Flying Cross from the US Congress, the Cross of Knight of the Legion of Honor from the French government, and the Gold Medal of the National Geographic Society, which was presented to her by US President Herbert Hoover. Yet even today, Amelia is still newsworthy, thanks to her mysterious disappearance on July 2, 1937. Earhart was attempting to become the first woman to fly around the world. She and her navigator Fred Noonan had covered about 22,000 miles of the journey. The remaining 7,000 miles involved island hopping across the vast Pacific Ocean. Just 3 weeks before her 40th birthday, on July 2, 1937, at midnight GMT, Earhart and Noonan took off from Lae with enough fuel for 21 hours of flying. Their intended destination was Howland Island. They never arrived and disappeared without trace. Their last positive position was over the Nukumanu Islands, about 800 miles into this leg of the journey. The US Navy launched a weeks-long search of 250,000 square miles of ocean around Howland. It was at the time the most extensive, expensive air-sea search ever mounted. No trace was ever found of the plane, and over time, many theories regarding Amelia's disappearance evolved. Nauticus Corporation, the Maryland-based underwater exploration group responsible for finding the Titanic, attempted to find the remnants of the Lockheed Electra plane Earhart flew on her fateful journey. Nauticus believed the plane was lost in the ocean and used sonar equipment to search a 650 square mile area that may yet hold the answers to the Amelia mystery. The group lowered a sonar listening device called Nomad over the side of a ship and trailed it behind the ship at an angle, collecting sonar data as it crisscrossed the surface of the ocean floor. It was hoped an acoustical map of the area would indicate whether the plane was there or not. But the $3 million search was plagued with technical difficulties linked to the extreme depth of the water and was eventually called off. Although Amelia achieved much in aviation, her early death and the mystery surrounding her overshadowed the achievements of other female pioneers. Among them was Amelia's friend, Jackie Cochran, who died on August 7, 1980. Her aviation accomplishments never gained the continuing media attention given to Amelia Earhart. Nonetheless, Jackie Cochran ranks as one of the greatest aviators ever, and a woman who frequently used her influence to advance the cause of women in aviation. When the Second World War broke out, Jackie rallied to have women fly aircraft. In 1943, she was the director of the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPs, program. Their job was to fly the planes from factories to the place of shipment for active duty. At this time, some women also test flew aircraft. Here at the Grumman factory, women pilots are test flying the Hellcat. Thanks to this program, Jackie Cochran was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal for services to her country during World War II. One of her later achievements was to be the first woman to break the sound barrier, flying a military F-104 Starfighter. Both Amelia Earhart and Jackie Cochran played major roles in advancing women in aviation and add richness to our history of aviation. A space shuttle this may be, but it's also the world's largest glider. The Space Shuttle Enterprise, NASA Orbiter Vehicle Designation OV-101, was the first space shuttle built for NASA. It was constructed without engines or a functional heat shield, and was therefore not capable of space operations. Its purpose was to perform test flights in the atmosphere. Two 747s were modified to captive carry the space shuttle. One is a 747 acquired in 1974 from American Airlines. The other is a 747 acquired from Japan Airlines in 1988. It first carried a shuttle in 1991. The first job was to hoist the shuttle up a massive tower and place a jumbo underneath the shuttle. Then carefully lower the shuttle onto the jumbo's back. Captive carry refers to a flight by a mothership and spaceplane, rocket or missile, paired together in a parasite aircraft configuration. The two are not separated in flight, as would occur during an air launch. Captive carry flights are normally used to test out new aircraft before they are launched under their own power, as well as for transportation, in the case of NASA ferrying operations for the Space Shuttle involving Boeing 747-100 shuttle carrier aircraft. Construction began on the first orbiter on June 4, 1974. Designated OV-101, it was originally planned to be named Constitution. However, a write-in campaign caused it to be renamed after the Starship Enterprise featured on the television show Star Trek. The design of OV-101 was not the same as that planned for OV-102, the first flight model. The tail was constructed differently, and it did not have the interfaces to mount OMS pods. A large number of subsystems, ranging from main engines to radar equipment, were not installed on this vehicle, but the capacity to add them in the future was retained. Instead of a thermal protection system, its surface was primarily fiberglass. These flight tests of Enterprise were crucial to the shuttle program. The shuttle had to be able to operate in space and, most importantly, carry out the glide around the world and land. Period was referred by the acronym ALT for Approach and Landing Test. These tests included a maiden flight on February 18, 1977 atop a Boeing 747 shuttle carrier aircraft to measure structural loads and ground handling and braking characteristics of the mated system. Ground tests of all orbiter subsystems were carried out to verify functionality prior to atmospheric flight. For all of the captive flights and the first 3 free flights, the orbiter was outfitted with a tail cone covering its aft section to reduce aerodynamic drag and turbulence. With the shuttle mounted on top of the 747, the airflow to the tail fin was disrupted, so the jumbo underwent some major surgery and had a twin tail arrangement added. The fins solved the problem. The problem would be worse when the shuttle was flown without the tail cones in later testing. The mated Enterprise SCA combination was then subjected to 5 test flights with Enterprise unmanned and unactivated. The purpose of these test flights was to measure the flight characteristics of the mated combination. These tests were followed with 3 test flights with Enterprise manned in order to test the shuttle flight control systems. Finally, Enterprise underwent 5 free flights. The craft separated from the landed under astronaut control. These tests verified the flight characteristics of the orbiter design. and were carried out under several aerodynamic and weight configurations. The jumbo was put into a shallow dive and the separation took place. The shuttle was airborne and gliding. In the 5 free flights, the astronaut crew separated the spacecraft from the SCA and manoeuvred it into a landing at Edwards Air Force Base. In the first 4 such flights, the landing was on a dry lake bed. In the 5th, the landing was on Edwards' main concrete runway, under conditions simulating a return from space. The last 2 free flights were made without the tail cone, which is the spacecraft's configuration during an actual landing from Earth orbit. These flights verified the orbiter's pilot-guided approach and landing capability, also demonstrating the orbiter's subsonic terminal area management auto-land approach capability in preparation for the first manned orbital flight. The flights demonstrated the orbiter's ability to approach and land safely with a minimum gross weight and using several centre of gravity configurations. With the completion of critical testing, Enterprise was partially disassembled to allow certain components to be reused in other shuttles. Then it underwent an international tour, visiting France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States of California, Alabama, and Louisiana. On November 18, 1985, Enterprise was ferried to Washington, D.C., where it became property of the Smithsonian Institute. This is the last of the test flights, and it demonstrates the enormous strain this piggyback arrangement put on the tail section of the jumbo. Here we see the shallow dive of the jumbo and the separation of the shuttle. Despite a small mistake by the pilot, which resulted in a bumpy touchdown, the flight was uneventful, and the series was closed and preparation for spaceflight went into full swing. NASA initiated extensive engineering, design and cost studies of a space shuttle. These studies covered a wide variety of concepts, ranging from a fully reusable manned booster and orbital to dual setup strap-on solid propellant rocket motors and an expandable liquid propellant tank. On January 5, 1972, President Richard M. Nixon announced that NASA would proceed with the development of a reusable, low-cost space shuttle system. Now here is an interesting little aircraft. It's a Boeing spotter plane, and although designed for military purposes, it could have been used in many private sectors of aviation. From a military point, the plane had countless roles it could perform. The aircraft had an incredibly short takeoff and an equally impressive short landing ability. Its stall speed was so low, it seems it could just hang in the sky. But it had another trick. When it was not in the air, it could be folded up. It took only a couple of minutes to fold back the wings and other protruding aircraft bits. From there, it could be either towed off by a jeep or readied for storage. It could be carried in a truck or even packed easily into transport aircraft. The design was simple but very effective, and the designers had done a complete job. There were restraints for everything, and everything worked properly. It was just a very simple little plane that was portable, yet still flew exceptionally well. Although it must have been strange flying the craft, knowing that it was designed to actually fold up. But there was another plane that was even more bizarre. This is a fully inflatable aircraft. It arrives on the airfield in a bag and is totally collapsible. The Goodyear Tire Company designed and built the plane. Basically, it's a winged powered balloon. If the fact that the aircraft looks strange put pilots off the concept, the very basic and rudimentary control devices surely must have put off many pilots. But it all worked very well. Like the fold-up plane, this was also built for the role of spotter plane. These planes are examples of how aviation manufacturers approach a problem. The difference in this instance, the goal was to build a miniature lightweight aircraft or ultralight aircraft. The idea for lightweight portable single-person craft has been tested in many varieties of shapes and concepts. Until a few years ago, it was very much the realm of science fiction. In this field, most of what all the big companies have learned must be readdressed, as manufacturers of these aircraft can't start with a large wing and move forward. This field is a unique area in aviation. So to fill the requirement, fold-up planes, inflatable craft, gyro or mini choppers, and even rocket belts have been tested. Today's powered hang glider, or as we term many aircraft today, the ultralight, is probably the most successful design, and its forefathers are found in the archives of the history of aviation.